Are you seeing a flickering of light in your stuff over there?
No.
Are we live? All right. That's Texan for hi. All right. So today is we're still the first day of Pesach. We actually have not started the first day of Matzot because that starts at sundown today. If you have not removed the leaven from your home, you have until sundown this evening to get it out. It seems odd, but if you're supposed to start cooking the meal when the sun goes down, I mean, follow me, indulge me a moment, if you will. If you're supposed to start cooking the food when the sun goes down, and when the sun goes down, you can't go back in your house, how are you supposed to get your leaven out of your house on the first day of the feast? So, as odd as it seems to see leaven, for instance, I was making my breakfast today and I picked something up and moved it because I was looking for some their peanuts. What do I eat? Pecans. And I picked something up and I looked at it as bread and I was like, oh my! Still the first day. We're not allowed to eat it at this point because we've had the meal, but it's still in our home because we have it. There was no way for us to move it out of our house. And boy, it was bothering me. I walked outside and I saw 2 bottles of Coke that we're going to give to our neighbors because we pack it all up and give it to our neighbors. And I was like, man, this bugs me because we've always done it ahead of time and then realized you're supposed to do it on the 1st. That doesn't mean you do it on the 31st of the previous month or the 30th or whatever it happens to be. It means you do it on that first day, whatever that day is, the specific day. So this is the first time we've gone down this road, and it was really bugging me this morning. And then I finally thought, well, what's harder to do? Get rid of everything before the party, come home and not have to worry about it for an entire week, or have the party and go home and be fully conscious of what you're doing as you're getting rid of everything. Oh, I'm not going to be eating this for a week. I'm not going to be eating that for a week. Not going to be drinking that for a week. I was like, well, it might be a little more, lasting for us. It may actually help us not to have leaven this week. I don't know. We'll see. But it's bugging me because we've never done it this way before. But we're trying to do it according to God's law. And God's law is you do it on the first night of Pesach. Well, how do you do it if you can't go back in your house? And yes, the Bible does say you can't go back in your house. I think in Deuteronomy. That paper that I sent everybody, or that file that I sent everybody that says rules for Pesach, the verse where I got that is on that. So if you want to look it up, you can do that. If you don't have a copy of it, send me an email, George Bush at thewhitehouse.com, and I'll send you one. Yeah, that won't work for you. It's my name, robert@allen.org. It's pretty easy. So if you don't have a copy of it, you should get a copy of it. That way, all of the laws have the scripture and verse from which they are derived, so that if someone says, well, where'd you get that? Where'd you get that? Where'd you get that? It's this easy. If you want to give them a copy of it, give them a copy of it. I don't care. I own the copyright on it. You can give it to whoever you want to. If they want to print it in a book, they better talk to me. Hey. They're going to get up and teach on it. They need to give me credit. That's all they need to do to stay within the law and not get themselves sued over copyright infringement. I don't care who gets it, as long as they are not up there acting like they did all this, put all this effort together and put this thing together. Just because you go in and add 2 or 3 things here or there does not make it yours. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. If the bulk of your work comes from something I did, that's my work, and I own it. But I'm just trying to say, if you're just honest about it, you can use it, you can give it out, and all of that. Just give credit where credit's due. I always do that with everything I do. It's why you always get my source material when I give you something. So anyway, that's just the right thing to do. So what was I talking about? Went down that rabbit hole and got stuck head first.
Just talking about getting the leaven out.
Oh, so we're talking about getting the leaven out. Well, we missed a couple of things last night, and I went to my office and started working on the message, fully intending to go over what I'm going to go over now as part of last night's ceremony. I fully intended to do that because it should have been part of the ceremony, and I saw a shiny thing, and that's the way things go. I'm getting old and senile. What can I say? We need to find us a young whippersnapper to come in here and take over. So, and if you're over the age of 50, you're not a young whippersnapper. I'm not looking for someone that's, because, if you're the age of 50, you're way older than me. I'm only 23. So I'm not looking for someone older than me or my age to take over. I'm looking for a young guy, smart guy, Hebrew speaking guy. Anyway, so part of the ceremony should have been the part where it says in Exodus chapter 12, verse 26, and Exodus chapter 13, verse 14, it says that we're supposed to teach our children to ask the following question on Pesach. And the words, in, of course, the Hebrew Bible are Ma ha'avodah hazot. These are all words that if you've been with me for any length of time, you really should know what these words are. Ma, what? Will that help it stick with you? What? You say ma. Ha-avodah. You hear avod, avodah. You hear that? The service, servant. It's of slaves. It's of working hard. It's of hard work. It's all about, it's of being a house, being a wife and cleaning the house while everybody else sits around watching TV. Anyway. Ha-avodah. What? The service, hazot. The this. Literally, that's a literal translation, which doesn't mean much in English, right? But so what what you're supposed to teach your child to ask is, what is this service? What is this ceremony? What is this thing that we're doing? And it says child. So the thing that developed around that is we take the youngest child in the family, the youngest boy in the family. I don't know why it had to be a boy, but they take the youngest boy in the family, and he's supposed to learn these Hebrew words. He's supposed to say it. And it's a real cute thing to do and all that. But we may be missing the bigger point. This is something that grown men should be doing. I have grown men in this room right now. One of them's like 40 years older than me, and he's my child. And the other one's 20 years older than me, and he's my child. Well, I'm 23. What can I say? And I am lying, right? Y'all know that. I'm not. You don't really think I'm 23, right? Anyway, but these are men my age or older. Well, I guess still my age. I mean, because we're not that far apart. But the point is, they're my sons. Why? Because I'm their rabbi. They sit under my teaching. That makes them my sons. But we don't use the word sons in the Bible. We use the word b'nai. B'nai is not sons, it's children. Point. Nah, she's too much like a daughter to me. I can't say she's older than me. She's like one of my girls. I can't do that. But right, well, actually, I think she is young enough to be my daughter, but that's not the point. No, I'm 23. Never mind. She's too old for me. The point is, she's my daughter, right? And she's a b'nai, children. You're supposed to teach your children. Well, sometimes your children are 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years old. Now think about it. Moshe lived to 120 years old. He had children that were 90 and 95 years old, right? That he did not sire. Let's put it that way. Why? Because he was the rabbi. He was the teacher. He was the one that brought the word of God to the people. So they were his children. And I hope you're getting the idea here that this wasn't supposed to be, yes, you should teach your little children this. And no, it shouldn't always be the youngest kid, because the middle kid gets left out, the oldest kid gets left out, the daughter gets left out. Switch it up. Let each one of them do it. Like, as they're growing up, let when they turn 9 years old or whatever and can handle this, you let them do it. And then when the next one turns 9, you switch to them. And when the next one turns 9, you switch to them. Just find some way to figure it out. Make it equitable if you want to. I don't care. But they should learn this. This should be a good thing. This should be something that you come up with from very early childhood, but it's not something that you leave once you grow up and become daddy. You still need to ask your question. What is this service? What is this thing that we're doing? Why do we get together every year and only spend a night? Why are we not spending a whole week on this? I'm sorry. I want to keep it going. I don't want this to stop. Y'all have to stay here. Just tell your bosses, find somebody else to fill in, but don't fire me. Is that what you meant? I guess so. All right. So now, once the question is asked, somebody's supposed to give an answer. And the answer is, this day is a day to remember. They say memorial in a lot of the older Bibles. I'm sure the newer ones are probably saying remembrance, because it's a day of remembrance. It is the Pesach. That's the real word. Passover is not the word they used in those days. It is the Pesach sacrifice to Yahweh, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Mitzrayim, which is Egypt, Israel and Egypt, when he struck down Mitzrayim, the Egyptians. And yes, you say Egypt and Egyptians the same way. They're both in plural, because there's not just one Egypt person, right? And there's not one town in Egypt, and there's not one building in Egypt, so it's in plural. And it wasn't there just for 1 second and gone. It's still there. So we say these things in plural in Hebrew, Bible Hebrew. Anyway, so you say he struck down the Egyptians and delivered us in our homes. He delivered us in our homes. Exodus 12:27, if you want to look that up. And of course, you know what he meant. They had to go and they had to hide in their houses, because the angel of death was going to go through the town and kill all the people, all the firstborn, which happened. And poor old Telly, no, it's not Telly Savalas. Yul Brynner lost his kid. Oh, it was so sad. I just spoke with a woman whose dad was the pastor of a Baptist church right here in this town for years. And to this day, this woman is, let's just say, over 40. Well, no. She's a bit past that, right? Preacher's kid, growing up with her dad being the Baptist preacher, and she said she has never seen the 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston. Can you imagine that? I can't even wrap my hand around that. We used to watch that every year. It used to come on network TV, right? I'm not making that up, right? Anyway. The Pesach meal will be something that gives us strength. How do I know this? Well, I'm looking at Exodus 13:9. This has really gotten mixed up over the years. A sign on the hand. Does that mean we have to get a tattoo? No, that's forbidden by God's law. Yes, getting a tattoo is forbidden by God's law. You can't get a tattoo. You can't get I'm starting to say that's not the right word.
Branding.
You can't get a brand. what else do they do? You can't like make cut marks and things like that. You can't make markings of any kind on your body anywhere. It's forbidden by God's law. So how are you going to have a sign on your hand? Oh, okay, we'll write it on a piece of tape. I mean, think about how ridiculous that sounded. Yet what do? We take the tefillin, we wrap it all the way around our hand and up and through here and make a nice little sheen and tuck it in. And no, no, no. Those ideas came from rabbis, and I say that with air quotes in case you can't see me, that lived in the Dark Ages, who did not speak the Hebrew language, had never been to Israel. They knew nothing about Hebrew custom, culture, or language, as I said. They lived in a place where there was all these people that descended from Abraham. That was for sure. That wasn't without any, that nobody doubted that. But they had gotten so far away from Israel in the Torah and Judaism, as it were, that somebody, they said, well, somebody's got to come up with some way for us to be Jews. And so they just started making stuff up. And that's what Judaism is today. We're still doing the made up stuff. Well, our group doesn't. And I know there are other groups that we follow the law, the actual Bible, as it's written in Hebrew. But a lot of people are still following those traditions. And so they actually think that wrapping that stuff around your hand is what the Bible meant by that. And it goes on and it says, and a memorial between your eyes. And so as early as the 1st century CE, no earlier than that, but so far, I mean, there could be an archaeological dig tomorrow and they find one, 20, 30, 40, 50 years before the 1st century, in BCE, one of those boxes they put on their head. But so far, what has been found by archaeologists only goes to the mid to just prior to the mid 1st century CE, which would be AD to the Christians. And that's as far back as the box goes, because what's happened? Well, the Jews they've been in captivity in Persia. They picked up a lot of bad habits in Persia. The Hellenization has swept across the land. And by the time you get to the 1st century, even the Jews have almost completely lost any connection with the Bible, because the Hellenized Jews, they're reading it in Greek. They're not reading it in Hebrew. And so when you get to the Dark Ages, they're not reading it Greek. They're not reading it in Hebrew. They're reading it in Aramaic. And Aramaic is a very Western language. It's nothing like Hebrew. Yes, it uses the same letters. And yes, it is confusing. You'll read it, if you know your Hebrew and you're reading it thinking it's Hebrew, you're going to get real confused real fast. And then, yeah, this is not Hebrew. This is Aramaic. Because it's so close, sometimes it gets confusing. But anyway, at least for me, some of you guys, I'm sure, are much smarter than I am. And I don't say that derogatory. I mean that. There's, people are not going to have a problem with that. I have a problem with that. Anyway, so the Pesach meal will be what are we talking about? This sign on a hand, and then it says the memorial between your eyes. So what they did was they made this little box, and they wrote the Shema in it. I'm not even sure what's in it anymore. I don't remember. It's like 1 or 2 little verses of the Bible are written in teeny tiny letters on this teeny tiny little scroll, and they stick it in this little box, and they put that box on the head and put a strap on it, because they're trying to put a memorial between their eyes. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, that's the last one in that verse, but weren't there a couple more maybe? Yeah, the children of Israel were taken out of Mitzrayim so that Yahweh's Torah will be in our mouth. What's a wonder we don't write the Torah on a what?
Swallow it.
Swallow it.
Yeah, and swallow it, or put it on a write it on pita and eat it. I mean, it's a wonder that didn't happen. Because if you're going by this same thing, we got to put a box on our head, we have to wrap this stuff around our arms. How do we get it in our mouth? Why didn't they take that to that extreme and start writing it on their what I say, pita, and their what do we eat? Matzot. Good Lord, Robs. Got distracted there with all that commotion. As to was there another one? And then it says Yahweh brought us out of Mitzrayim, is what it says in the actual Hebrew. I have it Mitzrayim in this because I was trying to make the difference between Egypt and Egyptians make a little more sense. It's at the top of the deal. I explained that. And then it's like a strong hand. So God has delivered them with a strong hand. So, or what do we see? Popeye, it's got the great big muscle, and I don't know, or maybe the hand's real big or whatever. I mean, that's what this stuff became because they started taking everything literal. So what's actually being said here? Well, it says the Pesach meal will be something that gives you strength. Now, the meal physically will give you a little strength, right? I mean, that's why we eat. It builds up our strength. It makes this machine run, but they're not talking about that. It's the going through the Pesach every year strengthens our resolve to live according to God's law. It strengthens our relationship with our God. That's what they're talking about. So there's not about the eating of the food, and it's not about any of that. It's just about eating that meal and making all the preparations and going through all of the effort to put it all together, have the meal, and then all the work of tearing it down afterwards. All of that gives us whatever it was I just said. I've already lost it. Now, it goes on and says, and something we should always remember. If you've got, how did they say that? A memorial between your eyes, a memory between your eyes. It's to remember. It's an idiom. It was never supposed to be a box on your forehead. Does that mean if you put a box on your forehead, you're all full of legalism and bondage? No, I don't see anything wrong with that. And I can guarantee you something that no Christian wants to hear. Yeshua, the man they called Jesus, wore the box on his head. And he put the tefillin around his arm and down to his hand. And whether he made the sheen or not is very doubtful. But he may have. I just don't think that goes back that far. I think we're trying to take things from the Dark Ages and shove them into the first century. And that's very wrong. But he would have wrapped around his arm for sure. And he wore the talit, this thing here. And it had the ziziot. Zizit in singular, ziziot in plural. Hope you can, I don't know if you can see that. Oh, wrong way. Here. Does that work? Anyway, he had all that stuff. Yes, he did that in his prayer time. Why? Because they all did that in their prayer time. That was a first century thing. That was something they did. Did he walk around town with it on his head? No, not very likely. Very few people would have done that. That would have cost them a lot of money. It would have taken a lot of effort to attain these things for whoever bought it, and then they would have passed it down to their kids. And if you've got your great grandfather's box that you're putting on your head, you're going to have to take real good care of it. And so you're not going to wear it for everyday occasions, except for if you're going to pray and stuff. That's what you're going to use it for, the special stuff, and be very careful with it. You follow what I'm saying? It's not something that only the rich people could have walked around with fancy ones on their head all day long. And no doubt people did that. But the average person would have had to take real good care of that, because that kind of stuff would have been hard to come by. So anyway, this is about what you remember. And if you don't remember the law, you can't live by it. If you don't remember why the law was given, you're going to start thinking that you're not under the law, you're under grace, because you're not going to remember that to live under the grace of God, if a Jew of the Bible times said that he lived by grace, that meant that he was fully compliant to the law of God, because God gave us his law because he is graceful. Anyway, that's the way it was back then. So we're talking about a memory. The children of Israel were taken out of Egypt. And then it says, it'll be in your mouth, the Torah. Well, how does it say it? The children of Israel were taken out of Egypt so that Yahweh's, it says so that Yahweh will be in your mouth. Now you're going to eat Yahweh? You'll put him on your pita sandwich? No, it means that you're going to be talking about Yahweh. Why? Because this is his celebration. Do we remember that from last night? It's not the Jews' celebration. It's not anybody else's. This is Yahweh's celebration. So who should we be talking about? Yahweh. That should be the main thing that we talk about for the whole week. And I hope it is. We got off on politics a little bit last night. Not too much, but that's okay. You can't just talk about Yahweh. Somebody's going to have to say, "Hey, will you help me pick this stuff up, put it in the garage or whatever?" Whatever. You're going to have to. Some of you are going to have to go to work and talk to customers. You can't be talking to your customers about Yahweh's Pesach. You're not being paid for that. Well, unless you are being paid for that, I guess you could do it. But don't be doing it if you're not being paid for it. You give your boss an honest day's work for that honest day's pay. And if you agree to work for that money, don't tell me it's not honest. I don't care if everybody else makes twice as much as you. You made that agreement. Just saying. Anyway. And he brought us out of Egypt with great power, is what the strong hand means. It was a spectacle. Moshe walks in, and with his brother Aharon, and the Pharaoh's sitting there looking at these two mutts compared to him. They're the little people, and he's the Nancy Pelosi of the time. And he's looking at the little Republicans here. And well, they might have been liberals. Who knows? But anyway, they say, "Let my people go." God says, "Let my people go." And he's like, "Well, who's your God to me that I should do what he says?" It's a fair question. He's not being a smart aleck. It's a fair question. If you can show me that your God is more powerful than the gods I serve, then maybe we'll have something to talk about. That's what it took. But it was pretty spectacular if you think about it. 9 plagues leading up to this Passover night, and every firstborn child in all of Egypt dying. Wow. So God showed his power in a mighty way. And we don't get to see displays of God like that very often throughout history. I mean, that's not to deny that the sun coming up and the moon coming up and the oceans roaring and all of that stuff is not spectacular power of God. It is. But this stuff like this is kind of above and beyond, don't you think? Because as rare as it is. Anyway. Okay, and then in Exodus 13:14, it was by his power, because it said by the strength of his hand. So by his power, speaking of God, and of course it's going to name him, Yahweh brought us out of Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery. The house of slavery. And it came to pass, Pharaoh made it difficult for us to leave, and because he made it difficult, God killed all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, from the firstborn man to the firstborn animals. Even the firstborn animals were killed off. You know that's got to be a move of God, because that don't just randomly happen. Therefore I slaughter to Yahweh, because remember, we're giving our sons the answer. All that are firstborn males of the womb, and he slaughters his firstborn males and all the firstborn children. Oh, I redeem. Okay, that's a good thing, because there are people out there that slaughtered their firstborn. They did. That was a Moloch thing, and I mean, you name the god, almost all of them did it at some point, except our God. He never did that. We were never supposed to sacrifice our children. Wow, wait a minute. What about Abraham? And the whole point in that story of Abraham taking his firstborn son up to the mountain to slaughter him was to show us that God has never asked us to do that and will never ask us to do it. It was an idiomatic telling of a story, a poetic, if you want to say it that way, a poetic telling of a story that was there for the Jews to see, that God has never asked them to sacrifice their children and will never ask them. God will provide us a sacrifice. It's called a lamb or a cow, or even a chicken can be a sacrifice. It has to be a clean animal. Chickens are kind of nasty, but they are considered clean by the Bible. Anyway, so the firstborn are redeemed. When your firstborn son is born, or the firstborn of, if you have donkeys or sheep or whatever, when the first one is born from any litter, you redeem it, which means let's say a sheep costs $200. You have to give a gift of $200 to keep that sheep. Otherwise, if that sheep or that donkey, if you don't want to pay the money, and it's not about whether you can afford to or not, because if you have that, you can afford to. But if you don't want to pay the money, say you have a donkey and you don't want to pay the money to redeem the donkey, well, God's okay with that. Well, all right, you don't have to pay the money, but you can never use that donkey for any labor. It'd be the same thing with the sheep. You can't milk it. You can't make cheese from that sheep. You can't eat that sheep. You probably should have to shear it, because, boy, in the summer over there, that might be awful for the sheep. But you couldn't use the wool. You couldn't sell it. You couldn't do any of that kind of stuff if you didn't pay the ransom, because that's what redeeming is. It's paying a ransom. Or I don't know. That may be the wrong word to use. It seems kind of harsh. But anyway, so with our children, because you're talking to your sons and your daughters, remember, your children. So you're going to make them understand that no, we were never going to sacrifice you. We paid for our children, because in that case, you don't have that option with your children. You have to redeem them. You have to pay that price. Well, how much does a kid cost? Okay, it works differently for animals than it does for people, right? And the Bible lays out what the redemption cost is. That's beyond anything I want to do today. So let's move on to the next thing. And it will give you physical strength. The sign on your hand, it will give you physical strength. The celebration of the Pesach, the redeeming of your children, all of these things work hand in hand, and this gives you physical strength. And to be and be the strength of your mind. The bands between your eyes, now it's using the word for bands between your eyes, because first it was, I forget how it was said a while ago, but that just means it gives you physical strength, and now we know it gives you mental strength. Let's see, what does it say after that? For with great power, with a strong hand, Yahweh brought us from Egypt. That's 13:16 of Exodus, if you want to look at that. And it came to pass, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them in the way of the Pelishtim. That's Philistines these days. For it was near. In other words, they could have gotten from where they were to the land of milk and honey a lot quicker if they'd gone through the land of the Philistines, right? That's what it says. For God said, lest the people regret leaving because of war and turned back to Egypt, because they had a fight on their hands if they went that way. That's like trying to go, let's say, through Saudi Arabia, like a group of gay priders trying to go through Saudi Arabia on their way to Australia. That's not a good idea. Have I got my point across? I hope so. And God turned the people to the way of the wilderness of the Yam Suf. So they went through the Reed Sea. That's what that means. He took them that way. Yeah, it was going to be a longer trip, but at least that way they're not going to be cowards and turn and run back to Egypt because of the war going on with the Philistines, or they're not going to give up because they can't beat these people and run back, because you know how they were. Oh, for the flesh pots and for the bread, blah, blah. They wanted to go back where they weren't having trouble. So if they'd had trouble, they'd have gone back a lot sooner. They wouldn't have just laid there and moaned about it. They would have gotten up and run back home. So God took them a different route. That's all that's saying. The children of Israel went in groups of, it must be 50 or 500. It's not 5. I have 5 in there. I didn't realize that till this morning. It's too late to look it up. Out from the land of Mitzrayim. That's 13:18. You guys can look up and find out what the number's supposed to have been. And Moshe took the bones of Joseph with him, for he, speaking of Joseph, swore an oath to the children of Israel, saying, so he's not swearing the oath, he is making the children of Israel make a promise to him. God will reconcile you with, I read that backwards, God will reconcile with you, and you will carry my bones away with you. Because he wanted to be buried in the land of milk and honey with the rest of his family. And they journeyed from Sukkot, now that's the name of a place, and set up camp in Etam at the edge of the wilderness. And Yahweh walked before them during the day in a pillar of cloud and led them on the path by night in a pillar of fire, a light for them to walk by day and at night. Now there are those that teach that the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud was the legs of God. Think about it. By day, by night, by day, by night, by day, by night. It's kind of cool if you think about it. Is it accurate? No, it's more folklore than anything, but I like it. Let's go with it. There's reason to say it. I mean, if you stretch the rules of biblical Hebrew grammar and twist it and bend it like a rubber band, you can kind of get there. But so I wouldn't really go there. But it is kind of a cool thought, a cool idea that those are his legs, Anyway, he did, let's see, where did we go from there? By day and by night. He did not remove the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night in the presence of the people. In other words, it was always there. Regardless of their sin, regardless of their rebellion, regardless of their griping and moaning. I mean, these people had nothing to worry about. They're like typical children. They don't have to pay the rent. They don't have to pay the utilities. They don't have to even go to the grocery store. Their food is coming to them, right? Just like kids. And what do? Oh, it's not fair. No, everybody else has more stuff than I do. In spite of it all, God was still a parent. God still made his provision. And every once in a while, when the kid asked for something special, the kid got something special, right? I think it's a good way to look at that, because that's pretty much exactly what happened. So one of the things that's been bugging me in this past couple of years is the Christian take on the cross. And I heard this again. We were watching some comedians, some Christian comedians. Of course, they turned their comedy show into a witnessing event. And they're talking about, oh, yeah, so God decided to get another man's wife pregnant. And then this half man, half God, he goes to the cross. And the Jews are really the ones that killed him because they're the ones that got the Romans to do it after all. And no, he didn't say that. That he left that part out. But so they murderized him, and he did all of that because he had this little stone tablet that had your name on it. He did this just for you. Not the New Testament doesn't even teach that. And it sure isn't found in the Hebrew Bible, the part that Christians call the Old Testament. That's not what that was about. The cross was about Pesach. It was about healing the land, the idiom healing the land. It was about the reinstatement of the covenant between Yisrael and Yahweh God, Yahweh Elohim. It if you don't live according to God's law, what does God say about you? Well, think about what he said. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. And when you don't understand that God came here in human flesh, God did. He probably did not use the egg that was in Mary. He probably provided his own. In fact, it's almost without a doubt. You can take the egg of a woman and strip it of its DNA, but I don't think God did that. I think he just put his own egg in there, and it was his own fertilization. And what do you have? An absolute human clone of God. God in human flesh, the visible image of the invisible God. God did this. He didn't have his son go die for him like a coward. That's what cowards do. God didn't do that. God died. Oh, is that really a big deal to the one God that, yeah, well, you can kill him, and what's he going to do? Get back up. No step for that stepper. God, Yeshua said, I mean, they blame the Jews. Really? Because Yeshua, the guy they call Jesus, he said, no man could take my life. No man. No Jew, no Roman. Nobody. No man can do that. I, he said, lay down my life for the sheep. He laid down his life for the sheep. Not for Mr. Sinner sitting on the corner, ignoring God and beating his wife and treating his kids badly. No. He did it for the sheep. And the only sheep that God had in his flock, we know. How do we know what they are? Well, because Yeshua, the Jesus guy, he said, I am not come. It does not say sent in the Greek. It says come. It's just the translators don't get the way a Hebrew speaking Jew writes, and when that gets translated literally, what that looks like in Greek. They just don't get that, right? Well, most don't. I am not come, but for the sheep, the lost sheep of the house of Yisrael. It's in your New Testament. He did not come here for the Gentiles. He didn't come here for the Christians. He didn't come here for the atheists. He didn't come here for any of them. Why? Because he came here to heal the land, which is an idiom. He came here to reinstate the covenant that had been broken by the Jews for not living according to the law. That's what the covenant is the law. They broke their covenant. God sent them away because it was either kill them all for their sin or send them away and try to reestablish the covenant with them later, which is what he did. Look at Hosea chapter 2. It'll explain it to you. But so he comes back. God comes down and robes himself in human flesh, and he lets these people beat and whip and they stab him and stuff, and they think they've really done something. But when it was time for him to lay down, to stop breathing and lay down that human body, that's what he did. And he did not say, I commit into your hands, I commit my soul. That's not even in the Greek text. It's in your English Bible, but it's not in the Greek text. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Not in the Greek text. You see what's happening? They're trying to make him the son, and he has to have a conversation. Why have you forgiven me? Or forgiven me? Forsaken me. Why have you forsaken me? Oh, don't you know it hurts? They take a beautiful song from the book of Psalms and turn it into this horrific scene of some cowardly dad turning his back on his son and letting his son do his bidding for him because he's a coward. Oh my God. They don't realize that's what they're doing, but that's exactly what that story does. And it has nothing to do with the truth. That was a song of victory. My God, oh, how you have forsaken me. Oh, how far are you from the roaring of my voice? What do you mean by it? Well, he was screaming. It hurt. And they give the story of Yeshua going to his people. Can't you stay awake just a little while? They all fall asleep. Catches them snoring. Can't you stay awake for a little while? And what does it say? Well, spirit is weak. The body is weak, but the spirit was willing, but the body was weak. It's the opposite from the cross. The body was weakened, but the spirit was willing. Because it was the Spirit of God breathing inside that human body. So he lays down his body, does whatever he does in the belly of the earth. There's not a lot of detail there. I know there's thousands of pages of stuff about something that wasn't even spoken about. All I can do is roll my eyes at stuff like that. I mean, you have 2 verses in the Bible that talk about the Ziot, right? Just 2. And you can find 350-page books on how you make them. If the Bible is not coming off simple, you're not doing it right. It was written in a very simple manner, and everything boils down to the most simplistic idea, the most simplistic understanding, because it was made to be understood. It was not made to be not understood. So the cross wasn't about he saw your name in the book of life. The only way your name is in the book of life is if you live life, if you choose life. Behold, I set before you blessing and cursing, life and death. Choose life, he said. The only way you're going to have your name in the book of life is if you choose life. If you choose death, you ain't going to be in the book of life. Sorry, that's just the way it works. What do I got to do to get to heaven, Rob? Well, choose life. What do you mean by that? Live the way God said to live. Live according to the law. That's the life. It is the way. It is the truth. It is the life for you Christians. In the beginning, How's that go? I'm thinking of John, not. Was the Word. And the Word was with God. God was the Word. What's the Word? Torah. Life. When Yeshua said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, he said, I am the Torah. God is the Torah. It came from the very interior of God. Could God have been evil and made things so he could kill them off and murderize them? Sure, he could have. Did he? No. Was the God of the Old Testament an evil, marauding, petty, jealous murderer, and the God of the New Testament lovey, lovey, love? Nope. And if you're reading it that way, you're doing it wrong. Because the God that they say of the old, which is so wrong, there is no old and new. There's a new sacrifice and an old sacrifice, but there is no new or old covenant. There's only one covenant. It's called the Torah. And you either are in covenant, which means you live by the Torah, or you're not. So if you live by the Torah, you have chosen life, and the whole cross thing brings you back into good standing with God. That was the whole point. We have to do our part, and our part is so simple. Yeshua said it's not even hard. Yeah, he said that, because it's not. If living according to the law is hard, you're doing it wrong. It is not hard to put a fringe on a talit or hang it from your belt buckle or from your shirt. That is not hard. It is not hard not to eat matzah all week. It's hard to remember not to eat matzah. Stay out of the restaurants, people. Just saying. Living by God's law is not hard. What makes it hard for people is they're making it hard. And it's usually because they want what they want. They want to do it their way, which is not God's way. And that makes things hard. God gave us the simple plan. He gave us the easy way out. Follow it. It brings life. It makes you strong in body and strong in mind. These are the lessons that we teach our young children so that when they're grown men, they remember. They have strength between their eyes. So I don't care how old or how young you are this year, remember between your eyes and be filled with God's strength of body and mind. Shalom, shalom, y'all.
The blessing, Be'ivrit. Yarecha Yahweh Beyish Merecha. Ya'er Yahweh Panai Velecha Vihunecha. Yisa Yahweh Panai Velecha Veyasim Lecha Shalom. And in English, may Yahweh cause you to lie down so that you may rest. May he touch and encourage you. May he prepare you for what is ahead. May he watch over you. May he keep you from harm. May he cause goodness to grow in you and take away the bad. May he arrange your life and cause you to flourish. May he cheer you up and gladden your heart. May he cause his light to shine through you. May he show you tenderness, favor, and love in his presence. May he show you kindness and be delicate towards you. May he show you his generosity, mercy, compassion, and desire for you as it comes forth from the depths of his soul. May he lift you out of your pit and deliver you from the things that hold you prisoner. May he draw you to his chest and cast his eyes on yours. May he show you his love and desire for you as he cradles you in his arms. May he bear your punishment and pardon you of your sin. May he take you for his bride. May he establish a foundation in you. May he place his name on your heart and mind and make your body his temple. May you be his treasure. May you always be on his mind. May he draw you near and comfort you when you are afraid. May he assure you there is nothing to fear because he is with you. May you and all that concerns you be at peace because he is your friend. Amen.